Good. Let us focus on body defense mechanism and immunity. In this lecture, we are going to define what is immunity, classify immunity, explain the mechanism of natural and acquired immunity, discuss the response to the inhibition by microorganisms, and describe abnormal immune response. So what is immunity? The term immunity refers to the body-specific protective response to an invading foreign particles or organisms. So the human body has the ability to resist almost all types of organisms or toxins that tend to damage the tissues and the organs. And this capability is called immunity. And remember, it is not absolute. And this is the reason why we have diseases. There are two types of immunity. There's natural, which is also called innate, and also there's acquired, which is called adaptive. So in natural immunity, it is non-specific and it is present at birth. Response to foreign invaders are similar from one encounter to the next, whereas acquired immunity is specific and it develops after birth. There is increase in intensity of that immune with repeated more exposure. So let us look at the natural or innate immunity. So basically, the natural defense mechanism is the ability to distinguish between the friends and foes of self and non-self. What does it mean? It has to only us to distinguish the good and the bad on its own body and which is not on its own body. So just a mechanism that is include physical and chemical barriers, skin and mucous membrane, antimicrobial substances in the body excretions, the actions of white blood cells, and the inflammatory response. So let us look at the physical and chemical barriers. An example is the skin and the mucous membrane. When our skin and the mucous membrane are intact and healthy, they provide a physical barrier to invading microbes. Sebum and sweat secreted on the skin surface contains antimicrobial or antibacterial or antifungal substances. Air in the nose acts as a cause because it acts as a filter which prevents entry into the nostrils. So one way of urine flow from the bladder is also a way of embodies mechanism. So antimicrobial substances in the body secretions include hydrochloric acid from the gastric. There is the viral juices from the biliary secretion. You have the lysosomes from the granules of cells, like the macrophages, we have the saliva, we have the immunoglobulin in the vasosecretion and saliva, and also we have the interferons. So white blood cells actions. White blood cells participate in both in natural and acquired immune response. Granulocyte includes neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. These are the cells of acute inflammation, where the neutrophils respond to acute bacterial infection, eosinophils, allergic reactions, and the basophils most likely goes to allergic and parasitic infections. So a non-granular leukocyte include monocyte and macrophages and lymphocytes, which are more specifically for what? For economic infection and immune. So lymphocyte consists of B cells and T cells, where the B cells are produced by the bone marrow and the T cells are produced by the thymus. And they play a very important role in humoral and cellular and immune system. So inflammatory response, major functions of the natural and non-specific or innate immune systems is response, and the chemical mediators assist in this response by minimizing brand loss, like for example, serotonin, which is produced by the GIT, and part of it is bound in the plasma cells, like the platelets. And when the platelets, in case of a bleeding, it is released and promotes coagulation and prevents bleeding. And bleeding is another one. So walling of the living organism activity, phagocyte and promoting formation of fibrous scars, tissues and prevention of injuries, not the physical repair. So a dysfunction of the natural immune system, like immunodeficiency, where there is not enough immunity, it is not functioning well, or there is a persistent inflammatory response going beyond, or the body is autoimmune, that the body is acting against its own tissues. It's recognizing its own tissues as enemies. So the other one is acquired immunity. The acquired immunity develops as a result of prior exposure to antigen through immunization or by contact of diseases like COVID immunization and contact diseases like chickenpox, like measles. The subsequent cases are not as severe as the previous one. So weeks or months after the exposure to the disease or vaccines, the body produces an immune response that is sufficient to defend against the disease upon and the exposure. Active and passive immunity. Active immunity means that the individual has responded to an antigen produced in its own body. Lymphocytes are activated and the memory cells form provide long-lasting resistance in active immunity the body produces on its own. So passive immunity means that the antibodies were produced somewhere else, either from the maternal past to the infant or from one person then given to somebody else. And that is the basis of my vaccines. So response to innovations, when the body is invaded or attacked by bacteria, viruses, or any other pathogen, it has three means of defending itself. Number one, the phagocytic immune response, where it engulfs the microorganisms, or the monoantibody immune response, or the cellular immune response. So let us look at phagocytic immune response. The first line is the first line of defense, and it involves white blood cells, the granulocytes, and the macrophages, which have the ability to ingest foreign particles after engulfing them. So the phagocytes are also remove the body wounds and dying or dead tissues. That is what is called the process of apoptosis. So humoral and cellular immune response, a second response, the humoral immune response, sometimes called the antibody response, between the B lymphocytes, which can transport themselves into plasma cells that manufacture the antibodies. So the third mechanism of defense, the cellular immune response, also involves the T lymphocyte, which can turn into special cytotoxic or killer cells that can attack the pathogens themselves. So then you have humoral immune response. So in humoral immune response, we have to check on this. Before exposure to a specific antigen, the crowns of B lymphocytes remain dormant in the lymphoid tissues. They are very dormant, they are not activated. On entry of a foreign antigen, macrophages in the lymphoid tissues phagocyte the antigen and then present it to the adjacent B lymphocytes. They are there at this point. You will see that what is called T, the B helper cells or the T helper cells. So in addition, the antigen is presented to a T cells at the same time and activate something called activated T helper cells are formed. So they are silent, now they are activated to work. So they are harmed in another way. So this B lymphocyte is specific for the antigen immediately enlarge and take on appearance of a lymphoblast. They now become lymphoblast. So about the humoral continuation of the humoral immune is that some of the lymphoblasts further differentiate to form a plasmoblast, which are a precursor of the plasma cells. The mature plasma cells then produce gamma globulin antibodies. Other B lymphocytes differentiate into two B lymphocyte and crowns with a memory of the antigen. So all this process is called chrono expansion, and differentiation of the immune cells in case there is an agitation of the immune system in the body. So in this cell, you can see that in natural immune, this is how it is produced, the first exposure. Now the primary response, then the secondary response, the body produces marrow because it has the memory. So at this point, there is memory participation, the memory and these things are the dendritic cells. So the antibodies can inactivate the inhibiting agent in one of the several ways. To inactivate the agents of the inhibiting the cause, what is causes the disease in several ways. It can make agglutination in which the multiple range of particles which antigens on their surfaces. It can cause agglutination. It can cause precipitation, in which the in the molecular complex of the soluble antigen antibodies become so large that it is rendered insoluble and precipitate. Then it can cause neutralization and also it can cause lysis. So these are types of immunoglobulin. There's immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin E, immunoglobulin D, and immunoglobulin M and immunoglobulin A. Immunoglobulin A is very relevant because it causes the placenta. It can be associated with passive immune, and also it is abundant in breast milk. So it's a very important immunoglobulin in terms of maternal or fetal interchange in terms of immune. So immunoglobulin G forms 75% of the total immunoglobulin and appears in serum and tissues. That is in the tissues, blood fluid. It assumes a major role in blood-borne and tissue infections, activates the complement systems, and enhances phagocytosis and crosses the placenta. So that means it can also be very important in the maternal infant interchange. So immunoglobulin A is 15% of the total immunoglobulin and appears in body fluids like blood, saliva, tears, breast milk, pulmonary, gastrointestinal, prostatic, and vaginal excretions. Protection against respiratory, gastrointestinal, and intestinal infections, and prevent absorption of antigen from food. Passes to neonates in breast milk for protections. So immunoglobulin A forms 10% of the total globulin and appears most in the intravascular serum. Appears as the first immunoglobulin produced in response to bacterial infections and the viral infections. Activate the complement system. This type of immune is very important when it comes to a serological test like Zika virus, dengue fever, and chikungunya. This is the type of immunoglobulin which is worse, is tested clinical practice. So immunoglobulin D, which forms 0.62% of the total immunoglobulin, appears in small amount in the serum and possibly influenced by B lymphocyte differentiation by bacteria is not very clear what it does. So immunoglobulin A forms a very insignificant amount in the body, appears in serum, takes part in allergic and hypersensitivity and reaction and combat parasitic infections. So let us look at cellular immune response. These develops gradually over a period of 24 to 48 hours after the second encounter with an antigen. T lymphocytes are primarily responsible for cellular immune. Stem cells continuously migrate from the bone marrow to the thymus gland where they develop into T lymphocytes. By presenting time, by spending time in the thymus, the cells are programmed to become T lymphocytes, T cells other than the antibody producing B lymphocytes. So that means the transmission is in the thymus despite they are being produced in the bone marrow. So the cellular immune, the T cells attack when inhibitors directed. Cellular reactions are initiated by the binding of the antigen with an antigen receptor. So the T cells then carry the antigen messenger or blueprint to the lymph nodes where the production of the T cells is stimulated. So some T cells remain in the lymph nodes and retain a memory for the antigen. Other T cells migrate from the lymph nodes into the general secretion system and automatically the tissues. So let us look at types of T cells. So let us look at the types of T cells. There is T helper cells. When activated, the T helper cells secrete cytokines that attack and activate B cells, cytotoxic T cells, and the natural killer cells and cell and the macrophages and other cells of the immune system. So T helper cells produce different types of cytokines and determine whether the immune response will be the production of antibodies or cell-mediated immune. So cytotoxic cells is a direct attack that is capable of killing microorganisms, atoms, and even some of the body cells. So for this reason, these are called the killer cells. Cytotoxic attack the antigen directly by altering the cell membrane and causing cell lysis and releasing cytotoxic enzymes and cytokines. So let us look at suppressor T cells. They are capable of suppressing the functions of both cytotoxic and T helper cells. This means that these suppressors functions serve the purpose of preventing cytotoxics from causing excessive immune reactions that may be damaging to the body's own cells. So these suppressor cells, these are the ones who causes the immune system into what you call homeostasis. After the fighting of all the cells, these are the ones who suppress the cells so that we don't continue causing damage, and now the immune system is restored to its normal function. So the other one, we also see the complement system, the circulatory plasma cells protein, which are made in the liver and activated when antibodies coupled with the antigen are known as complement. The complement has three major physiological functions: for defending the body against bacterial infection, bridging natural and acquired immunity, and disposing of immune complexes and by the product associated with inflammation. Now, the complement system is categorized into three classes. There is the classical pathway, there is the resetting pathway, and the alternative pathway. So the complement system response as this: it causes cytolysis, that it causes isomerization and chemotaxis and anaphylaxis. That is how the complement systems response in immune system. So abnormal immune reactions are like antibody mediated and cellular mediated and mixed reactions. Let us see antibody abnormal immune response where there is antibody-mediated reactions. These occurs within a minute of exposure to an antigen. The most common manifestation of this type of allergen reactions is food allergies, childhood eczema, and hay fever, and extinctive asthma. In these conditions, the release of chemical act locally causing different effect that depends on the site. So acute systemic anaphylaxis or shock, it is caused by entirely of an antigen in the blood, for example, a snake venom and injections like penicillin. These are profound effects throughout the body, including in the right vasodilatation, leading to severe hypotension and contracture of smooth muscles in the respiratory system, which causes a difficult in breathing, and it's a life-threatening. So other antibody-mediated reactions of antibodies with cells that have antigen on their cytoplasmic membranes may cause the cell to rupture. So abnormal reactions to antibodies and the antibody complexes sometimes result in them adhering to the endothelium of blood vessels, causing inflammation and damage. So in this case, the intrinsic pathway of inflammation on the coagulations is having an effect. So cell-mediated reactions, the antigen include intracellular microbes, for example, those causing tuberculosis, mumps, and measles, and some vaccines, for example, against the smallpox, and some methods and compounds that combine with the protein in the skin and cause allergic dermatitis. So mixed reaction autoimmune diseases, tissue causes tissue damage and signs of disease as the body fails to recognize its own tissues. Destruction of the body own cells may be either humoral or cerebral mediated. For example, in this case of mixed reaction, it's found in the thyroid as motor thyroiditis, or sometimes in stomach and Addisonian pernicious anemia, or cortex of the adrenal gland called Addison's disease, and pancreas type 1 diabetes. Pancreas type 1 diabetes. So let us see the nursing or the medical procedures in this case of immune defense mechanism. So in terms of nursing process, is the nursing assessment, the assessment of the immune function begin with the health history and physical examination. So in this case, you have to take a proper history of your patient. For example, you have to take the age, the nutrition, infections, and immunization history, allergics, medication, and blood transfusion lifestyle, and other factors which are associated with this person. Then you do a physical examination on your patient. You do a physical examination on your patient. So assisting with medical measures aimed at improving immune status and treating infections, improving the nutrition status and maintaining the blood and blood functions. So you have to ensure that the physiological functions of your patient are okay after if they have been altered by the immune system, you have to restore them and back to normal. So careful and hygiene, encouraging the patient to cough and perform deep breathing at the regular intervals and protecting the integrity of the skin and mucous membrane. This is what is called the basic rehabilitations on the bedside. So use strict aseptic technique when performing procedures to prevent allergic reactions. So assisting the patient in maintaining stress and in adopting a lifestyle that enhances the immune system to function well. The patient or patient like it's a child must be informed about the potential risk and benefit of treating the gene. So if there is a drug reactions, if this drug is having some potential side effect against disease, let them get the information, let them so that they can decide whether they accept it or not. So a major role of the nurse is to assist the patient and family to understand the treatment options and to cope with the uncertainties of the treatment outcomes. So at this point, the clinician is expected to maintain integrity. So health education, which is the key thing in terms of health management, that is health education in terms of health promotion, empowering the people to understand how their body works and make a decision about their body. So about the signs and symptoms that indicate the infections, you have to tell them what are the signs and symptoms means that there is an infection in the body, like the cardinal symptoms of inflammation, which is fever, sweating, those are functions, redness, emptiness, all those. So whenever they experience chest symptoms, that is not typical for them, they should contact their health provider. So about any prophylactic medication regime, including dosage, indications, times, actions, and the side effects should be explained to them so that they can be the doctors of themselves. Also avoid other areas with infectious and crowded areas because of the disease. So the patient and family also need to learn about other ways to prevent infection, instructing to monitor for subtle stages in the physical status and must be informed of the importance of seeking immediate health care change. About the importance of continuing the treatment in human assisting in incorporating into their lives. And that is the end of our today's lecture about the immune and the body defense mechanism in our body. So with this one, you can be able to apply, you can be able to explain to people various things. Thank you very much for the study. Thank you very much for this unit. If there is questions can be asked, and then please share this note will be posted. Thank you very much.